Okay, so welcome back. So we're thinking about this question. Okay, do I want a certain amount of money over time, like 4,000 over time per week, or do I want the lump sum payment right now? And the first sort of complicating factor that we're going to consider is the effect of interest rates. And okay, so we got to answer a few questions. First of all, what are interest rates? And second of all, why does the existence of interest affect our choice? So now, I'm sure you guys are familiar with the idea of interest, okay? Because I imagine most of you have a savings account, and you guys probably know that when you save your money in the bank, in your savings account, you collect interest, okay? Most checking accounts don't collect interest. Some do, okay? But the vast majority of savings accounts collect interest. Um, and the amount of interest that you collect is based on is quoted as a percentage of the amount that you save, okay? And that percentage, usually quoted per year, is known as your interest rate. And the type of interest rate varies depending on the type of savings account that you have, okay? So for example, here I have some various saving options, okay? Uh, this is this isn't like completely related to our topic, but I want to just go over a couple of these. It's always useful in my view to do a little bit of personal finance in an economics class, okay? Just to, sometimes people don't know about these types of things. And, in terms of managing your own money, it's good to be financially literate, okay? So I'll just go over, I'll spend a little bit of time going over some of these, okay? So for example, what most of you guys probably have is just a regular old savings account, okay, a conventional savings account. And most conventional savings accounts right now are paying around 1.5% annual interest, okay? So for example, here's Capital One savings account, for example, pays a 1%, 1.5% interest rate. Now what that means, of course, is that if I have $100 saved into that account, at the end of the year, the bank will pay me $1.50. Okay? Doesn't sound like a lot of money, but again, you're getting it for free, so it's hard to complain about that. Now, you can get higher rates of interest if instead of going with a regular old savings account, you go with what's known as a money market savings account. Okay? And these money market savings account, they can pay a little bit more. For example, here's this Total Direct Bank money market savings account. That's an interest rate close to 2%. Okay? Well, that's not bad. Now, by the way, if you don't have one of these money market savings accounts, I suggest that you consider signing up for one. Okay, I bank with Ally Bank, and I use a money market savings account instead of a conventional savings account. Now, the disadvantage with these money market savings accounts is that they are a little bit less liquid. What I mean by that is there are some restrictions on how often you can access the money. So for example, for these money market savings accounts, you can only, generally speaking, withdraw from that account no more than 6 times per month. And if you want to do it more than 6 times per month, you end up having to pay a fee. So, okay, so your money is a little bit less accessible. That's this concept of liquidity, okay? But I think most people are not dipping into their savings account more than 6 times a month. So it's kind of worth it for the, for the free money that you're essentially receiving from that higher rate. Okay. There are some other financial instruments. Okay. There are certificates of deposit. You guys have probably heard of these. This is just another thing you can get from your bank. Okay. A CD. And these pay higher interest rates than the money market savings accounts, but at the expense of locking your money away for a longer period of time. Okay, so for example, if you purchase a 6-month CD, you can't access that money for 6 months. Okay, but again, the trade-off is usually the interest rates are a couple of percentage points higher than you would get in a typical savings account. Government bonds, kind of the same thing. You buy the government bond, and that bond is going to mature, and you're going to get your money back. Government bonds usually have interest rates comparable or a little bit lower to most bank CDs. Okay. Now, with all 4 of these types of savings instruments, there's very little risk. Okay, you put your money in a CD, you buy a government bond. There's only a very small chance that you're not going to be able to get that money back with interest. Okay, unless the U.S. government goes kaput and decides to default on its debt. Okay, you're going to get your money back. Now, if you want a higher rate of return than that, then you basically need to take on some risk. Okay, so for example, a lot of people save their money, especially their retirement savings, in the form of mutual funds. Okay, and mutual funds have a much higher rate of return, have a much higher interest rate than everything that I've mentioned so far. But there's actually the chance that you could lose some money. Okay, so for example, here I have some interest rates. Here I have some rates of return for various mutual funds. These are all different types of mutual funds that you could invest in. And you can see, okay, there are some that have been doing very well this year, but actually, because the market has been so bad, there's quite a few more that have been doing very poorly. Okay. Now, mutual funds usually consist of sort of a basket of stocks. And so while we're on the topic of mutual funds, we might as well talk about the stock market. Okay, so a lot of people, they save money and then they put that money into some sort of brokerage account and they invest in the stock market. The stock market as a whole is actually a pretty good investment. Okay, so if you average the entire stock market over a 10-year period, that has a rate of return of roughly 10% per year. That's very good. That's essentially better than any other savings instrument that's really available to most people. But of course, again, there is the element of risk with the stock market. This rate of return of 10%, that's averaged over a very long period of time, over decades. Okay, in any given year, in any given month, the stock market could go up or it could go down. Okay, so just a sort of a recap, okay, of various ways that you can save your money. Now, okay, so how is this relevant to the choice that I was asking you guys to make? Well, here's the thing. So suppose instead of choosing the $4,000 a month, you took the option of choosing $2 million today. Well, here's the thing. If you take that $2 million and invest that money, you can start generating income. For example, okay, let's say that you put your money in a mutual fund with a 5% annual interest rate, a 5% rate of return. Well, 5% of $2 million is $100,000 a year or $2,000 a week. Okay. Now, $2,000 a week, now all of a sudden, probably this option is starting to sound pretty good, right? So taking the option of having the $2 million a day, it's not just $2 million a day. You see, getting $2 million today comes automatically with a payment of $2,000 a week, assuming that you save that money at a 5% interest rate. So now what do you want? Do you want, this $4,000 a week? Or do you want $2 million plus $2,000 a week? Now, all of a sudden, I think you'll agree that the $2 million option is starting to sound a lot better. Okay. So, in other words, to correctly compare these two options, okay, we need to be comparing apples and apples. And we need to compute a quantity called the present value. And what the present value takes into account is it takes into account the fact that money received in the future is worse than money received today because money received today can immediately begin collecting interest. Okay. And this concept of present value, okay, it's not just used in economics, but it's used in any field that deals with money over time. Anytime you're thinking about payment over time, this concept of present value and taking into account the interest rate is relevant, particularly in the fields of accounting and finance. Accounting and finance all the time, you have to deal with expected value calculations. Okay, so I think that's a good stopping point. In the next segment, we'll learn how to compute the present value.